Good morning, everybody. Welcome to TLDChat. My name is Brent Schlenker. Today is the 4th of May. And what does that mean? May the 4th be with you. Just had to say it and get it out of the way early before Anthony jumps on and starts throwing out all the Star Wars jokes. And not that that's a bad thing, but, we're looking forward to it. So today is Thursday. We have a fantastic day lined up for you today. We have Michelle and Toddi from Blue Bottle Biz who will be joining us in a few minutes. Very excited to talk about employee engagement and how we can impact that as training and learning and development individuals. And like I always say, in TLDChat and the TLDC community, we like to talk about the details of how we get the work done of training, learning, and development. Since we are a community of training and learning and development professionals that span the industry as a whole, from beginners, if you're in school just learning about instructional design, or if you're a senior leader, an executive, a chief learning officer, and everything in between. You develop training. Maybe you don't even have the title of training, but you are a project manager, or you work in sales enablement or something like that, and you perform the functions of training. That's what this group is for, and that's why we've created TLDC, to bring all of those folks together, no matter what your title is, as long as you're performing or interested in the training or learning and development function as a whole. Doesn't matter what your title is. We can help you be better, stronger, faster at the things that you do. So you'll notice on the screen that we have a conference coming up. We actually launched TLDC in 2016 as an event in San Diego, which was fantastic. Those of you that were there can attest to that. And those of you that might be in the chat and hanging out with us today can talk to some of those folks that went if you want to know a little bit more about it. We are working very hard to disrupt the event industry and actually try to build something that gets you value. Go figure, something you can walk away from the event and know that you have moved the business needle forward a little bit, either in your career or in your team, or in your projects that you do, or just in the organization that you work in. You've got the things that you need to move forward. And we're shifting a little bit and recognizing that with today's technology, like crowdcast.io, we can actually start having these event conversations in the virtual space like we're doing here at TLDChat. So we do a lot of the conversations that you might have at an event. You'll notice that we have here on TLDChat. So we've been doing this for a few weeks now. And I would say that if you've been hanging out with us even a few times a week, you've already gotten more information than you probably get at a conference. So when you blend something like this together with an actual face-to-face event, you really get a good, at least I believe, you get a very, very good sense of who your community is. You start to know who the experts are, and the event then just becomes almost secondary to the community and the chat groups. So instead of the event being the primary thing, it's just sort of a bonus, right? You finally get to hang out with all of your peers in one location, all of your colleagues, everybody that you've gotten to know online, and then you get to learn some more, and you get to do all of the hands-on and the work and the networking that maybe you weren't able to do in the community virtually. So, I've always said that of all the industries, we should be better at doing events and communities and helping people learn. And I have just not seen it happen. We run events the same way every other industry runs events. And since I tried to ask so many people for so many years to do it and nobody would change it, we just decided, well, if you can't get someone else to do it, you better just do it yourselves. So That's why we're here. That's what we do. And that is our main goal, is to help you guys, to help the community. So give us some feedback. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, what you want to talk about, what you're learning. Is this impacting the work that you do? We definitely want to know if this work that we're doing is of value to you. And if we're missing the mark somehow, please let us know that as well. Yes, we are exceptionally informal in our conversations, but I believe that's part of just sort of where things are going. If you want to go catch a formalized webinar, where there's plenty of those out on the internet, you can go watch and listen to. But if you want just to have a conversation, hang out with some peers and talk shop, then that's what we're all about. So. Speaking of talking shop, without any further ado, I'd like to bring on the screen Toddi and Michelle from Blue Bottle Biz.
Good morning.
Hello, ladies.
Good morning.
First of all, I'd just like to say that I work really hard to keep as much balance as I possibly can with the genders in TLDChat, but it's always hard for some reason to get the ladies to come on video. And so I can't even begin to tell you how much I appreciate you guys hitting that button that's, hanging with me on the video, the go live, and helping balance out the sometimes testosterone heavy chat environment and collection of folks. Not that that's a bad thing, but love having you. So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So give us, Toddi, why don't we start with you? Give us a little introduction.
Okay. So I'm a marketing manager with Blue Bottle Biz. And we actually, Michelle described it a little bit earlier, what we are. We are a content provider with about 40,000 resources, online videos and books from 400 different publishers. So we've got a lot of really good business and technical content available on our platform. So what I do at Blue Bottle Biz is I'm a content promotion person. So I work with some of our customers to help them develop the plans for their particular audiences to figure out what's the best resource on our platform. If that's technical, or if it's business or leadership oriented, or we have a lot of content from PMI, really cool stuff.
How'd you get into this field? How'd you get here?
I answered a call for an interview, and it turned out to be a good fit. I've always been an instructional designer. I've always been in the learning space. I was a former Army trainer. Actually, I was the trainer for the SUGV robotics program for iRobot. And that's really kind of where I learned instructional design. And that was, a very formal program working with the military. But then I started doing more instructional design in the commercial world and discovered how much I really loved the technology behind it. Worked a lot of integration projects where I brought in different assets and LMSs and stuff into like workplace environments. So I've done complete integrations top to bottom with companies before. And I've always been in that space where I've been evaluating products for learning, whether it be, books or videos. So I've always had that role. And I really like what we're doing here in terms of making open source learning available. And so it was very appealing to me. So this is kind of a hybrid role. It requires me to know a lot about how learning happens in the workplace environment, but it also requires me to understand a lot of the back end technical details, but then there's a marketing piece of it as well. So, and Michelle is our PR person, so she has the more official version of what we're doing.
Hi, Michelle.
Hello. I think Toddi described it well. So we do have a collaboration component along with definitely with the extensive business library. So a lot of the social learning, informal learning aspects, but still providing some structure to informal learning.
So tell us a little bit about you. So how did you get here?
Yeah, so similar to Toddi, I answered the call for an interview. So I am originally from the Midwest, from Wisconsin. And I started my career in PR agency life, working with a whole slew of industries, including higher education. So doing some PR work for local universities. as well as healthcare industry, the construction industry, a lot of different things. But I moved to the Austin area now about 2 years ago to pursue some work with startup technology. So I have some background in fintech, in medtech, but really based in the startup community. So when the opportunity with Blue Bottle Biz presented itself, I had the technology background, but also the education component. And I thought, why not? Let's pursue the corporate education track. And
Cool.
just really loved what we're doing and behind. No one can argue with learning and building knowledge. So
Right.
definitely is a good fit.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, it's good to have you guys here. And so we're going to talk a little bit about employee engagement. Those of you that are hanging out in the chat, a quick welcome to everybody that's here. And we've got some official questions that we're going to go over, but those of you folks that are here, even though we have guests on talking about this, I want to hear from you guys as well. So feel free to throw your comments and thoughts in the chat, or if you are just dying to get on the video, because I know how you guys are, feel free to just let me know and I'll click an invite. This is not like Blab from last year where you just get to jump in randomly. I have to invite you. So if you have an overwhelming urge to make a comment that's too long to type into the chat, just let me know and I'll click the invite to screen button. JD, good to see you. Joe, good to see you. Cara, Amanda, everybody. KB, do I know KB? I don't know. We have a new person in the room, perhaps. Welcome. Good to see you all. Dave, good to see you too. Mark, everybody. Craig, Paul, Anthony, Luis. Whew, did I get everybody? All right. Good. As long as everybody feels good about being here. Everybody hang out. It's fun. So we got question number one, and I'm going to remember to click this button. So how serious is the employee engagement problem, in quotes, in the workplace, and what factors affect the issue? I'm going to click the start button, and so people know that that's what we're talking about. And when they hit the recording, they can jump in and listen to that. So who wants to take that first? Take a stab at it. Is there a problem with employee engagement in the workforce? Really?
Go ahead, Toddi.
Well, I mean, considering that the transition from, workplace to workplace costs, a huge amount of dollars to most companies, I would say that there is definitely an engagement problem. There's a lot of statistics out there. There's statistics that say that, the problem is like $11 million. Is that right, Michelle?
It's a lot. It's a big number.
It is a lot.
It's a really big number. And so what happens is that, HR groups are busy trying to get new people in all the time without necessarily looking at the retention of the people that they have. So that's where the engagement factor comes in is, how do you keep the people that you have right now happy so that they really want to contribute, they want to stay. So it is a big issue. And as we fall closer and closer to what I call the retirement cliff, we're going to have a bigger problem because we're losing a lot of the workforce talent. We're backfilling with younger people who may not necessarily have all of that same seasoned knowledge, not that they're not smart, but they don't have that experience. And, we're trying to make sure that they have learning opportunities to engage and really care about what they're doing and make that part of what matters to them. So happier employees don't leave as quickly as those who are unhappy. And, happiness often depends on the engagement factor in your workplace.
So how do we define that engagement, specifically? We throw that term around a lot, right? And so we know, from a business perspective, we measure attrition, or HR measures it. So we're looking at attrition, we're looking at, onboarding, right? If that experience good, are they going to stay? How long do we need them to stay in order for us to feel like we got, work out of them? If they gained a lot of knowledge and experience, were we able to capture that and transfer that to other employees? Is there anything else? Any other factors or metrics that I'm missing when we talk about engagement?
No, I just throwing in a comment. I think it's important to let employees help define what employee engagement should look like. Oh, okay. I think that a big part of, as leaders, we have to listen to what our employees are looking for, what will keep them happy, what will keep them engaged, not only in the workplace itself, but in our learning programs. Straight from their mouths, I think would be a great value to our organizations.
Yeah, I wonder what that sounds like. Those of you guys that are in the chat, what does that sound like? What does that look like to you? If you had to describe what good engagement at your place of business is, well, what does that look like for you guys? I'd love to hear it too. I mean, because we talk about engagement in the courses we create, right? Or the learning experiences that we create, right? A high level engagement tends to equal high quality learning experience, right? And so when I hear that term, I immediately think of that, right? That's sort of the engagement in the content, engagement in the learning experience, only because that's where I came from, right? That instructional design, that developing solutions and whatnot. But I know at the business level, when people talk about engagement, they are talking about, how do we keep employees? It's almost more like they're talking about happiness, right? How do we, when they say employee engagement, they're really saying, are these people happy? I would think. Kind of, or maybe they're two different things, slightly different, but it's kind of the best, because if you're happy, you're engaged, you're talking with people, you're enjoying your job, you enjoy the people, you enjoy the process, you enjoy the work, all that kind of stuff. At least that's kind of how I see it.
Right. Yeah, and it is different in the workplace. I think it's more of a sense of accomplishment. At the end of the day, you feel like you've done a good job. You walk away not overly frustrated.
Okay, so value. Do you feel valued in the business? Do you feel like your efforts are being valued by everybody else? And that if you went away, would you be missed? I guess might be a good way to put it too, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think that ties into leadership really communicating what is the mission of the organization and where do employees fall into that? Because, doing our research and in our blog post series this past month, we talked about employees wanting to feel like they're part of something bigger. They aren't just doing their job to complete the work. They're doing it to contribute to something larger, whether it be the businesses in the communities that they serve, in their industries. So really communicating that clear message of what are we bringing to the table as an organization as a whole, I think is valuable.
Yeah, I think it does boil down to, we talk about this a lot here too. I know it's been thrown around. I think we talked about it with Brandon Carson from Home Depot about culture, right? And making sure that culture is a huge part of employee engagement. And if you've got a culture that's a good fit for your employees, and that culture is nurtured, you can, companies that have that much higher rating, however it's measured and whatnot. But I think Joe makes a great point that it's a two-way street, that it's, not only, just like we were talking about yesterday, as far as communication is concerned, right? Not only do you have to be a good communicator, but you have to be a good receiver of communication. Same thing, I think, when we're talking employee engagement, not only do you have to be engaged yourself, but you have to be able to, well, for lack of a better way to put it, perform the behaviors that help other people be engaged, right? And, on both sides of it. And really, are we just at the end of the day just talking about being nice? Do we just can we all just be nice to each other? Is that an easy answer? And then we're done? Okay, bye. We're all done. Just be nice.
Well, and Michelle and I aren't experts. We certainly love this area of study. And for the things that we've been finding out, it's not always about the perks or even necessarily being nice, but really driving it from the top down in an organization to find out what people are really looking for, to be able to ask the questions, to start the interaction from the top, and to be able to say, okay, what makes you feel valued? Or, what do you need to make your job feel more fulfilling? What kind of learning are you wanting? Do you want to be self-directed? Do you want more programs? That kind of and just asking the questions and finding out. That's really important.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess that's part of just building relationships and building a culture of caring, right? I think JD Dillon nails it perfectly, right? I mean, if you're good at showing you care and that you really care, you sort of naturally perform those behaviors that lead to good employee engagement. And Amanda makes a great point too. And it sounds like I'm going to try to scroll back up here to the first part of it, but she mentions companies who are winning at engagement aren't actually focused on engagement. Instead, they're obsessively focused on what's best for their employees. And I would totally agree. I mean, it's like raising kids, kind of, right? If you just do everything with their best interests in focus, you're probably going to end up being okay as a parent, right? It kind of sounds the same to me. I don't know.
It's a really good analogy, though, because I think back to my son, and my son is a video production guy. He does camera AC work. He's really creative. When he was about 14 years old, I could really see that he was into doing motion graphics and things like that. So I handed him a fully loaded Mac, with the entire Adobe suite. Encouraged him to get into a tech high school program where he was doing more graphic design and movie editing. And that really, just listening and watching and seeing what he was interested in helped me direct him. So what he does now is he's a lighting and grip guy in Los Angeles.
Fantastic.
So, but I think if we see our employees the same way, if we see that they're really interested in, maybe something like project management, maybe they're interested in doing multimedia production, to be able to provide them the tools to learn how to do those things and then apply it, give them opportunities to apply it to their roles. Even if it's slightly outside of what their job description is, to give them that opportunity for growth.
Absolutely. And I think too, when you allow your employees, you listen to them, you build the environment that they're looking for, that's going to translate into happy customers as well. Because, engaging your client base, your customers, that starts with your team. So you have to have that solid internal culture that, whatever that may look like within your specific organizations in order to really grow your your client base and your customer base, keep them happy and loyal as well.
Yeah, right. Well, that's a great point. So there's this thing that we all talk about called the extended enterprise, right? A lot of us in the industry have to train that extended enterprise, right? The channel partners, the resellers, the different areas outside of that. So I wonder, and I know none of us here are experts in this field. Maybe I should have had that disclaimer ahead of time. If anybody's watching this recording later, we're just interested in this, and it's part of what we do. I think we all feel like this is part of where we have an impact in the business. But when we're talking about that extended enterprise, is there a different type or level of culture and engagement that we need to be aware of, or is it the same than internally?
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely different. I mean, I've set up training for our channel partners before, and you have to really communicate what your culture is that you want them to reflect. What the company's values are. And it's an interesting proposition, because I remember doing this even for our channel partners that were located geographically in different areas. And so it becomes a whole matter of training them in the ways and onboarding them onto what your corporate culture is. If that corporate culture is to make sure that the customer is always right, that's the message you want to convey. And it certainly translates to happier customers when they know that they've got a partner who's going to help them make their system work the best way, and that they're not going to be, the customer's not going to be unhappy. So it does come, again, from the top down, from the top of the organization out to the bar channel partners and everything else. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And I think really quickly, I think when it comes to, like, if you internally value a culture of continuous learning and providing continuous learning opportunities for your employees, I think that can translate into your client base or your customer base as well. Rope them into that learning experience, give them, share knowledge, encourage them to share feedback with you on different, texts that you're reading or concepts that are emerging in the industry. Really embody that continuous learning, not just within your own four walls.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think being able to extend that out, since they at times, they will be representing you, right, and talking about your business. I do think it's important that that extension of the business has that same culture. So figuring that out is great. And I think we may have already jumped into this question here. What things can employers and managers do to increase engagement across all of their populations? I guess we've kind of covered that a little bit, but let's nail it down a little bit more specifically. What can we do?
Well, you know my stance on listening. I think I've said that quite a bit, but not just listening. You have to take it that step further and really act upon what you're hearing. So it can be different with any organization. But listening, and if it is, showing that you value your employees, find out how do they want to be recognized. Is it through bonuses? Is it through extra days off? Do they want to be recognized quietly? A lot of people, or some people don't like that public recognition of all the bells and whistles. I think it's adapting to each individual and what they're looking for.
And that's actually much more of a trend these days, is to really be more individual in how you're working with individuals to get them up to a performance level or to a level where they want to be. A lot of the focus these days is on, and actually the research shows this too, that employees prefer to have conversations with their management, that rather than getting feedback from the traditional 360s, but they want to have those one-on-one conversations with the people who are actually managing them. Which is good. I mean, because again, it goes back to listening, to being able to listen and talk and engage at maybe a more personable level, bringing back the person into our companies, because we have a lot of automation out there. And automation is one of the things that causes this job challenge. As great as it is, automation can also depersonalize the process. So it becomes sort of an issue.
Yeah, you know what? That's an interesting point. Do employers and managers have a tendency to disconnect and do a little less listening when all of the kind of the work, right, that management used to have to do involved engaging personally with people? Now that a lot of that connectivity and communication is automated, maybe partially to blame for why there might be workplace issues with engagement? I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking out loud.
But some of the research that I've seen, even with millennials, is that they prefer to have those one-on-one conversations. And it seems counterintuitive, because this is a generation that relies a lot on devices. And it was actually even something I read with Gen Z, is that they prefer to get direct feedback. And again, I mean, I never see anybody in the Gen Z arena that doesn't have a device in their hand, even when they're saying they're talking to you in person, but they like that direct feedback. So, maybe this is something that we need to realize. And Michelle and I have spent a little bit of time in the last month just kind of researching some of the generational differences in learning and engagement in the workplace. And it's been really surprising what we found out. So I think, Gen Z, even though you think that they may want to be told what to do via a text or something electronic, I think they actually really do value that engagement.
It's probably because they miss it. They didn't get enough of it growing up because they were just texting all their friends. And now they're like, dang, I wish people would just talk to me.
My daughter is Gen Z, and she's in the workplace. She works at the college bookstore, but she does all the visual merchandising, and she's described to me how they work and how they learn. But she'll say to me, "Oh, I need to call my manager," and I'm like, "Whoa, you call? You make phone calls? What concept?"
Yeah, how come you never call me?
Not just mom.
Oh no, I'll text my mom and my dad, but I call everybody else.
But I think that's interesting too, because that's not what I would expect to hear.
Yeah.
I need to have that conversation. So again, and automation certainly threatens the workplace in a big way. Jobs are being taken by having work processes put in automation, but it also creates, a different type of workplace. I've actually heard stats that automation is going to probably create as many jobs as it takes. So, again, we have to identify what are the needs going to be for the business and figure out how to engage people to want to learn how to do that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, let me dial back a little bit here. We've got some great chat coming in. And I just wanted to hit on JD's comments. He says, I like culture of continuous achievement. What do people want to do? What will they find valuable? How can you help them get better here or elsewhere? Do that. And I think everybody would agree that it kind of matches with where we're going as an industry too, right? We're moving towards solving performance problems as an industry, as learning and development and as training. We're not just tracking butts in seats anymore. We're trying to figure out ways to define how is it that we impact the business and get those KPIs and matching the work that we do and how it impacts and moves that needle. And that's where I like the term achievement that he uses, right? If we're helping people achieve their goals, and helping them move forward, then, and we can measure that and the business impacts that are connected to it. Now, all of a sudden, people are going to be happier, right? I mean, people are always happier when they're achieving something and moving forward and growing, whether that's learning or just getting a particular project done, taking it through to completion, or meeting a quota or something like that. That sense of achievement is always valued. And I just think that's a really interesting and cool way to look at it. Thanks, JD.
Yeah, and actually JD just mentioned another point here I think is really important, is that you trust that people will do their job. And that trust allows you, I think, to let them engage at a level that they want to engage at, whether that's in open source learning. If I find that there's something I want to know, I'll go look for the information. And my current role and in past roles, I've had that autonomy where, somebody knows I'm going to get the job done, but I can also take a little bit of time and go figure out how to do something maybe even more efficiently or learn a new process. And that trust factor is really important.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Boy, we could do a whole hour on trust alone, right? Yeah. We'll have to bring that back around to just culture. Maybe we have just a culture conversation at some point. But right, JD's right. Yeah, it's not easy, right? Trust is hard. It's not a lot of this soft, squishy stuff that we talk about when we talk about culture and engagement and trust and the emotional, the people stuff. It's like it's hard to measure, and I think that's where the difficulty lies, because businesses are very numbers oriented. They're very, mechanical. Everything's, we've grown up in this industrial era for so long that that's the kind of stuff that's easy for us to do and easy for us to manage and measure. But the people stuff, we still struggle with that. And then we wonder why things kind of go south. But it's nice to have more data around the squishy, soft stuff, right? When you can hear and read articles about that, certain successful Fortune 500 companies had super high levels of engagement, however they defined it, and the ones that kind of failed and dropped off over the years coincidentally had really bad low levels of engagement, and to know that data, the data is so strong that you can't say, oh, well, it was only like 55%, or whatever, and it was just kind of a significant difference or whatever, in the stats, but it's huge. Like when you look at those numbers and when you look at and you see that research, you don't have to be a statistician or a PhD to know that, that's legit data right there, right? Again, it depends on how they define it, but I mean, even if they define it a little bit wrong,
right,
I mean, it's still huge. I mean, the numbers are pretty significant, at least from what I've seen. So
knowing what's behind the data too, what's driving that data to be what it is, what are the practices that are making the data what it is. My daughter's a student in Oregon. She'd love to go to work for Nike. Nike doesn't have a lot of openings, and I've heard some things from some friends of mine about how Nike onboards. They really make part of what they do is that everybody understands that there's a story behind every product. They spend like 3 weeks just learning about storytelling, which is so weird. I guess when people walk in, they'll see people watching videos and stories, but they get people to engage on that level to understand that the product actually has a story behind it. And so they have a really low attrition rate, and there's not a lot of jobs at Nike. So again, like, what's behind those numbers? What are the practices?
Yeah, you know what? I'm currently experiencing fantastic onboarding, and I never really realized how poorly I had been onboarded at most, like every other job I've ever had in my career, until having this current experience, and I'm like, oh wow, this does make a difference. This is really helpful. Wow, these people really know what's going on, and how to help make me successful. So yeah, I mean, it's huge, and you don't really ever know until you're sitting in that hot seat, right? It's all talk until you're the one that's needing to be onboarded. And it's like, oh yeah, I really do prefer not just being dropped into the world and said, go for it. Because I used to think I was that kind of person. I'm like, yeah. Don't do the onboarding stuff with me. I just want to get in and I just want to get going. I think a lot of people feel that way, right? But wow, you just kind of, I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm old too, and maybe a tiny bit wiser than I used to be. I don't know, but it makes a huge difference is what I'm trying to say. And, finally realizing that, I don't know if you guys have had the same experiences, both good and bad, but.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
It makes a huge difference.
It does.
I'm looking at some of the chat on the dollars that get spent on that too. It's always interesting to notice how much gets spent, how much time gets spent putting.
Right. Yeah. So Craig's reminding me we got a question in the Q&A, but I'm also going to remind myself that I'm 10 minutes late on my 30-minute break. So let's hold the phone. Everybody take a deep breath, grab a sip of coffee, go to the bathroom, do whatever you have to do for 2 minutes while I jump back and tell everybody again about TLDC and what it is that we do here and why we're here to help you guys get better at what you do. That's why Toddi's here. That's why Michelle's here, hanging out, knowing that when we share and when we collaborate and when we talk amongst each other, we get better at what we do. And so that's why we're here, and we love being here for you. But I will also mention that, this infrastructure costs a few pennies. And so if you guys could maybe at some point, it doesn't have to be every day, it doesn't even have to be all the time, but every now and then when you feel so inclined, we have this fun little contribution button in Crowdcast that is fun. A few dollars here and there, every little bit helps. Don't feel bad. But yes, we are passing the hat, Irby. This is what we do. It's kind of like church, a little basket goes around. But in all seriousness, we do appreciate it. We'll give you a shout out on the website. We're working on improving that a little bit, but currently if you scroll down on the tldc.us page, we recognize our contributors for each month. So, it's a great way to get a plug for yourself too on the website. And as we begin to grow and we will begin to offer you more value as well when we can upgrade the system. So Crowdcast has different levels. And so we're just, as I've said in the past, this is an experiment, a really fun experiment, but, to get some engagement from the community. If you guys feel like you're gaining value from the TLDC community, let us know by signing up for the newsletter or throwing us a few bucks or both. Whichever works for you. We really, really appreciate it. And we're working hard to figure out how to best, build a 21st century kind of community that's good for everybody and that everybody sees value, and it's not something that you feel like is unacceptable from a financial perspective or either that from a feedback perspective. We want you guys to feel valued, right? We want you to feel like you're engaged as well. So it's part of what we're trying to do here. So we appreciate all the help you can give us. And my last comment for today will be, or at least at this halfway mark, will be on TLDC 18 coming up January 29 and 30 in Phoenix, Arizona at Galvanize. And we are going to have so much fun. I'm psyched. With each day that I bring this up, I get more and more people asking about it and pinging me offline, which is great, which is exactly what I want. If you're curious, if you want to show up, if you want to facilitate something, if you want to be a speaker, I will never, ever, ever again in my life do a call for proposals. Worst nightmare I have had in job experiences. So we're going to build the event based on active participation, the community, those people who, and basically build the event that we would want to go hang out at and be at, and where we see the most value, between Luis and I, and we've got decades of conference experiences. And so, we know a thing or two about how to make this work and what you guys like and what you don't like, but, the world's changing. And so we want to make, something that's unique as well. There's a crowded event marketplace out there. And we know that. And so we're bringing all the value we can. We're capping it at 100. So the price can't be beat. We're at $395 for the early registration, and we're capping it at 100 folks. So, there's and again, there's reasons for that, right? We don't want a 3,000 person event where it's really hard to get connected with people and you kind of feel lost in a sea of humanity. One of the things we heard loud and clear from TLDC 16 was that people loved the deep networking that they got, the ability to spend extended periods of time with their colleagues and peers and build those relationships, and to really get to know what people do. So we're gonna take those things that worked, and we're going to strengthen that and make TLDC 18 even better. So looking forward to that. If you guys have any questions, of course, I was born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona. And so if you guys have any questions about the area, or, oh my gosh, will I really melt if I go outside? Can I cook an egg on the sidewalk? All that fun stuff, hit me up offline. I'll tell you all about it. And all the facts and fictions about Phoenix, Arizona. But since we're doing it in January, it is the most beautiful month of the year here in Arizona. I mean, we've got about, I would say, 8 months of beautiful weather. So, but of course I'm local, so I'm biased. But as far as everybody else has told me, January is the best. So that's why we're doing it. And, we're definitely looking forward to it. So thanks again, everybody, for being a part of TLDChat and the TLDC community, and helping us out, to make this better. There. How's
Very
that?
cool.
And thank you so much, Blue Bottle Biz, for hanging out with us today.
Thank you.
This is good. So let's hit this last question here real quick before we have to close it out. So I'm going to start answering. How do you feel about allowing associates cross-train or explore training for another job within the company? Does that hurt current associate engagement? I'm
going to let Michelle take that one.
I think that's a really good question. And I honestly think that there is value in letting employees cross-train into other areas within the organization. It increases inward mobility. And I also think that when you have employees who aren't in a specific department day in and day out, they're going to bring a fresh perspective, especially if they have the drive to learn about, whatever this other role is. I think they'll be more motivated to bring a new perspective and to really dive in and provide value to another area within the company. And it goes back to feeling like you're part of something bigger, I think. there was one of the Pearson reports that just came out talked about network of teams and how the workplace is moving more toward a network of teams. How you aren't just contributing to one specific aspect within the company anymore. It's kind of where things are going that it's almost, who knows, it might be an expectation in the future. But
interesting. Yeah, I'm a cross trainer. I literally went from tech writing to the training environment because someone invited me to learn it, and I am really glad I did, because I love this field, and it's something that I'm grateful for, that I had the opportunity to do that, and the manager that supported it.
I think it's hard for companies though, right? Don't you think? I mean, you've got a really good employee who's just nailing it at that one job right there. Just like, they're fantastic. They're, you don't have to think about the job getting done. They're just there and they're killing it. And that person comes to you and says, I'd really like to move on and do something else. And I mean, you can't help but feel like, oh, I really don't want to lose this person doing that. But yet at the same time, you want to support that, right? And that you want to, move them, into another role, right? And help with that engagement. I don't know. I mean, I can see where the business would get torn, where managers and leaders would be torn. But also knowing that if somebody gets too bored in that job, even though they're really good at it, that they might leave. So better to maybe cross-train them than to have them get bored and leave.
And I think that goes back to the point of sharing knowledge of those employees that are in a specific role and giving them opportunities. If they do want to move to a different role within the company, give them opportunities to mentor that next person who will fill their place. So that knowledge is shared, so that person doesn't have to start from scratch. And if they're learning from the all-star, hopefully they'll become the all-star more quickly themselves.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot easier these days, too, with the new technologies that can go into the enterprise, right? If you're looking at an enterprise, like learning experience platforms these days, right? You can... you can almost just cross-train yourself by just saying, I'm really interested. Maybe I'm in manufacturing, right? I don't know. And I'm interested in marketing. So I sign up for the marketing channel, right? To just see what they're talking about, to see what kind of content they share. And just, I learn a little bit every now and then. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wow, I really do get this stuff. I really do like it. Maybe I can figure out a way to move in there. So you see who the experts are. Maybe you ask one to be your mentor, and you couldn't really do that in the past without this great sort of social experience, the platforms and the technologies that are out there.
Well, and that goes back to that open source learning, to, provide good resources to your employees, whether it's a membership to, open source training online, whether that's the kind of platform where we have, book learning and video learning, or whether that's allowing someone to create an affinity group within the organization. I know I got really interested in UX at one point, and we had an affinity group that would meet at lunch and talk about UX design, and that was actually very much promoted. Of course, they were an MIT-based company, but they really promoted that kind of thing within the workplace, which is really cool.
Yeah, I think you can, you get identified pretty early in some companies, as a high performer or whatnot, and they almost force you to move like every year or every 2 years or every 18 months. I don't know what it was, but it's almost like, I moved myself around when I was like the longest job I ever had was 10 years at Intel. I'll just say that for those of you who are new to me and don't know my background. You watch, you see what happens, right? You see the people that get pegged as the leaders, and they're in one job 1 year, the next year you see them at another job, and then you're still sitting in the same job, and it's like, I'm wondering what they're thinking about, am I just too good at doing this or what? And, so I just started moving myself around and just figured I'm going to define my own career anyways. And so So I figured, hey, listen, I've got this gigantic Fortune 500 company at my disposal, at my discretion. So, I could basically hop around and learn every single training function within a giant organization that there is. So that was kind of my goal. Once I kind of saw how all the politics worked and everything, I figured, all right, cool. I'm just going to do that. And I did training groups in manufacturing, in IT, in global implementations for warehousing, planning and logistics. What else? I mean, Intel University. I did a stint there for a while, so I got a gig around that, and I just kind of educated myself. I didn't want the responsibility, right? That they kept leveling you up, but I wanted to learn. And so I did just lateral movements all the way around until I kind of figured everything out. Then once I kind of felt comfortable, then I thought, all right, now I feel good about, having that upward mobility. But they let you do it, and which was fantastic. They were very big proponents of letting people move around.
Right. Yeah, actually, Irby mentions that don't forget the risk-taking aspect of doing that, and that not all organizations are supportive of that. My way to do that was as a contractor. I came out of one role knowing that there were things I didn't know, and so I actively took contracts that paid, thank goodness, to learn things that I didn't know. And it was not a bad way to learn things. It felt like getting an MBA and getting paid to do it. So it was kind of a cool way to get that skill up. I saw Craig made a really good point, by the way. He's saying that training is training, and that he really wants a company that prioritizes training and the learning culture. And again, that goes back to really prioritizing learning in your corporate environment. I heard something, I think it was a couple of days ago, that you can kind of define people as learners and non-learners, rather than, classifying your employees in other ways, but classifying them as learners and non-learners, and, being able to identify who those learners are and what they want to know is probably one of the more critical things in figuring out how to engage them. I don't know who a non-learner is. I don't know what that person looks like, maybe.
No, I don't know too many of those either, but I think it's industry specific, right? I think when I think about that, I think about those, because I guess I shouldn't say that. I guess I have known people in the past where it's like for me, my work is my life, and I just kind of live it, and I'm good with that. It's by design. But there are a lot of people that have that really strong split between there's my work, and when that 5 o'clock whistle blows, it's party time. It's, the weekend, it's the lake, the boat, the mountain, whatever. And it's done. And then Monday, go back to work, it's that in and of itself is I guess a culture, and the way a lot of people choose to craft their lives, but you almost just can't do that anymore.
Right. Yeah. 24/7 connection.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's some separation, right? I mean, for me, it's family first. So, that there always is that separation, but I love the work that I do enough to be fully engaged with it at any time. If there's work that needs to be done, it's not like it's a chore. It's what I like to do.
Mm-hmm. I think that ties in with learning too. The people who are really engaged in their jobs and love what they're doing, love the industries they're in. It's important for them to have access to the resources outside of the 9 to 5. So, the mobile learning content, just being able to, if they're passionate about it, give them the opportunities to continuously grow, even on their own time.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Right. Mobile first. Right. Mm-hmm. It's a big thing, right? Everybody's mobile first. And I think it's really important. And I think just by the sheer, nature of where technology is going, everything will just sort of be naturally mobile first. We won't be talking about it as such a thing anymore. It'll just be, but when we're in this transition period, we have to talk about it to help everybody kind of get on board and understand it. But then there's always that HR legal thing when we're talking about, do you have to pay somebody when they're at home at 9 o'clock at night taking training on their mobile device, do they get overtime for that? Do they get, and I used to kind of laugh at that and go, come on, why wouldn't people want to learn whenever they've got a few minutes? But it's legit. I mean, there are a lot of businesses that either have gotten sued or, employees just demand it. And I mean, it's a real thing. We kind of run out of time, and maybe we should do a mobile day one of these days and talk about some of those HR impacts and the legal impacts of the 24/7 employee, right? And how does compensation apply? But it's a hot button for a lot of people.
Right. There is definitely a lack of separation between work and home these days, and with more people working from home. And some people like that. They like to be able to stop and do something for an hour during their day that applies to their personal life. So it's raised a lot of issues in the workplace. I don't know if we have answers for those. Not today, anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, again, it all boils down to being a culture issue. I mean, there are times I like to run, and there are times where I just feel like I need a run in the middle of the day. And I do social media a lot. So if I, do a quick Snapchat in the middle of my run, or I post a cool picture of where I'm running on Instagram, there are moments where I feel guilty. Like, oh my gosh, are the peers, I've worked virtually most of my life, are people like, oh, why do I have to be in the office and work? Why does Brent get to go out and, and have a run? And it almost makes me mad that I have to feel like guilty about that, when to me it's like, well, do you also know that sometimes between 9 and 11 o'clock at night I'm working and getting stuff done? I mean, you don't ever like do a Snapchat about that. So I mean, I don't know, it's interesting, and it's going to be tough as we move forward, right? Because all this is changing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So any parting words? What kind of comments can you guys give us as we're walking out the door?
For me, I mean, I think the thing that I'm really finding looking across generations and across workforces is it really does boil down to people want to be valued. And I mean, that's kind of an age-old thing. You can say that the most important part of your job is that you feel valued in what you do. And if that's because someone provides you learning resources or training resources, that's one thing, and maybe, getting a bonus. But I think it really does come down to being motivated by being valued.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. And just adding on to the learning conversation, based on some of the research I've done as well, I think it does boil down to feeling empowered to learn in the workplace. And if you see somebody who's reading or watching a video, it's not something that they're not wasting their time. That's different, of course, if it's like a BuzzFeed video or something that has those types of specific value to their job. But when it comes to that workplace learning, I don't think it should be something that we look down on. Definitely.
Yeah.
Practice.
Yeah, sure. Well, awesome. Well, ladies, thank you so much for hanging out with me today and being a guest on the show. I guess we can call it a show, even though it's more of a chat, but we'll figure out what to officially call it later once it is something. But I appreciate it. Thanks. Good to see you guys.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, you guys, Toddi, I see you in the chat every now and then as well. And Michelle, hang out. Feel free to jump back in anytime, and we'll have you guys back on as guests. Maybe we can circle around and do some follow-up as all of this conversation starts to sink in with folks. We can do this again, and hit this topic because it's important and certainly not something we can cover in an hour.
Definitely not.
Most of the topics we have can't be covered in an hour. I'm still trying to figure that out.
TLDChat 18.
Yeah, definitely. Right. We'll have 2 full days. We'll get very intense.
And it still won't be enough.
We'll solve all the world's problems in just those 2 days, and it'll be good. Make it happen. All right, you guys, fantastic. Thanks. I'm going to close out your videos, but feel free to hang out in the chat and say hi to everybody.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Good. Bye-bye.
Good to meet you, Michelle and Toddi. Good to meet you too. Yep. Bye-bye. All right, everybody. Hey, you know what? I hope you had a great time today. We're at 9:02 and I'm going long, but hey, that's what I do. And it's all good because I can do that. You know, if this was like regular show or something, we wouldn't be able to do it. But great conversation today. Thanks again so much for Michelle and Toddi for hanging out with us. Irby, next time you're in Chandler, Brent, drop in. Oh, I'm in Dallas the next 2 months. Oh, yeah. Absolutely, Irby. I know you and I definitely have to connect since you're back in Chandler, for sure. Paul. Yeah, you know, I just keep moving stuff. The office is a mess. If I actually pointed the camera at like this parts of the office you can't see, it's worse than what you can see. So, you know, I need to spend a weekend cleaning up and one of these days giving you all a better background to look at. But anyways, good times again here on TLDChat, talking employee engagement with Toddi and Michelle from Blue Bottle Biz. We have a fantastic day for you lined up tomorrow. We have a filmmaker and expert luthier, Mike Sloat, aka Video Jesus. I know he totally hates it when we call him that, but great conversation tomorrow on Video Friday, one of our favorite days, one of everybody's favorite days on TLDChat. We always seem to have a big turnout. I don't know if it's because it's Friday or because the topic is fun and everybody's into the video stuff, but definitely love it. And yeah, you know, maybe we should just like have it. We'll just make it an all-star jam. How about that? I don't think the sync works out just right, but we can figure it all out. But I know we have a ton of musicians in this community. I do know that for sure. Sam's not here, but he can be our band leader and help organize us maybe or something fun like that. So yeah, we got Craig. I know Paul. Yeah, the whole crew. Luis, I know for sure. Everybody. So, you know, even if you want to just be the cowbell, that we need that too. So it's all good. But anyways, we're totally looking forward to that tomorrow. Mike's going to be fantastic. It'll be fun to have him on board and talking about video stuff and what we can do with video from a learning perspective. So always love talking about that kind of stuff. Again, you know, thanks everybody. Register for TLDC 18. We're capping it at 100 people. Go to tldc.us and find the link there. It's the easiest way to do it. All the links to everything we do at TLDC is at tldc.us. So go there, check it all out, and get registered. We're capping it at 100. So tell your friends. You know, if you want to bring your team, you know, your whole entire company, you know, let us know. We can figure something out. I don't think we can discount this thing any lower than the $395 that we've got it at, but you know, we've tried really hard to make it as affordable as we possibly could, even if you can't get your company to pay for it. We really do feel like $395 is something that even consultants can, you know, dip in and use as an expense and dip into their own pockets and be able to afford and hang out from an event. If you can think of a way for us to be able to pull it off for $0 for attendance, I'm all ears. But for now, we need to help cover some of these infrastructure costs and what it takes to pull this off. So. You know, we do, we've gotten it as low as we possibly can, and hope everybody will start registering. And, you know, just, it's not that far away. January is going to be upon us faster than you might think. So it's never too early to sign up. And so we're looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing everybody there that can make it anyways. I know our UK folks, I didn't see any anybody from across the pond in the chat today, but our UK folks, our Australian friends, New Zealanders, and whatnot. I know it's hard to get to Arizona. That's a long flight and a pricey flight, but we'll try to do some virtual streaming of the event as well. So we will have you there virtually, at least as best we can. It won't be the same as hanging out with us in person. I can guarantee that, but we'll do the best we can to keep everybody engaged and fully in. So, yes. You know, there's fantastic Airbnbs. The downtown Phoenix area has been revitalized significantly. And Luis and I looked up Airbnb to see what was available those weekends. And, yeah, I mean, there's, right, you could between get 10 of you together and just get a big old house, for next to nothing, per person, and hit the grocery store, whatever, and get yourselves dialed in, come in the weekend early. Yes, it does sound dangerous. And I do know people who have done this before at DevLearn, and yes, it is dangerous, but we won't go there. Maybe we could talk about that at a different time. But definitely value add for sure. So, all good times, good fun. Can practically guarantee it. I'm totally psyched about it myself, and we haven't even figured out what it's going to look like yet, but I kind of have an idea. Kind of have a pretty good idea, but already getting psyched about it. So very, 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 very good. Like I always say, I could just sit here and hang out with you guys forever and chat about this stuff, but gotta go. Got some onboarding to do. Talk to you guys later. Cheers.